I want to make a quick follow-up on my little gear cutting project I had. I'm basically done with it and learned a couple things along the way. On this particular transmission, I finally got to where I was trying to use an indicator off the back side of the gear to try to cut consistently. And I was trying to catch the corner. And I've come to find out that the corners, some of them are notched from where they hob the gear, and other ones just have an inconsistent corner radius, and you may not quite hit the same spot every time on the gear. So I ended up moving to the flat surface, which is, just into this broad area right there. And you need to do one side all the way through and get done. That way you've got an accurate 0 point from the factory to go off of. If you're going to cut both sides of this tooth, make sure you're done with one side and you're happy with them. And then you can zero off of that side and go in and cut the other side. Otherwise, like I've got some where I was just experimenting, trying to figure this stuff out, and I've lost my zero because I cut 3 of them and then tried to cut the other side, getting stuff set up, and now I have no basis basically to go off of. So like I said, I consider that factory surface a decent reference point. Still not going to be perfect, but this whole operation isn't perfect, so I don't guess it really matters. And another thing I found was to go in and do the bulk of your cutting and then retrue your wheel and then make a second pass and maybe just do 2 or 3 thousandths just to clean it up and keep your sharp edge on your wheel. Because if you go in there and you're hogging quite a bit, some of these I had to take 30 or 40 thousandths off of, they were so bad. And I felt like by the time I was getting down to the last tooth, I was losing some of my undercut. It was wearing the wheel back. And I don't know whether it's gonna matter or not, but it was enough that I went ahead and trued the wheel back up, and then went in again, and it was taking material out, below the leading edge, which meant I wasn't getting my undercut that I was looking for. No matter what, I think it's gonna be better than it was because they were terrible. It ended up being quite the involved process to do this. I think maybe a stop, possibly a 90 on a flat piece of metal with a slot in it, and then that you could clamp to this. Instead of using an indicator, you could use a metal stop. That way you don't have to worry about your indicator moving. Or as I had happen once, was my tip came loose, I was checking it, it still got me. When you're working with something with that much vibration, that's a possibility. But I think a bolt with like a locking nut on it would be sufficient to eliminate that. But that was definitely a problem. And then, like I said, I was inconsistently getting on these teeth, and I was ending up a little bit more variance than I like. So I ended up, like I said, indexing off of that flat surface, and then truing my wheel up. As you can see, I keep a little bit of angle this way and a little bit of angle that way. That way the leading edge of the wheel is right on the corner, and it gets down in there and does a pretty good job. This was definitely a problem. If I had a mill, I would probably mill a slot and then index that to each gear or each dog as I went around. But I'm done. Show you, well, you can't really see anything, but I did get the transmission back together, and it is in the case. Got my crank back in, and looking to try to get this thing buttoned up and back on the bike here soon. So anyways, just wanted to pass on a couple things. You always learn stuff when you're starting from scratch, and if anybody decides to do something like that, so you could get a lot more elaborate with the setup on the machine. And another thing I did find was when I was trying to get my angles right on my teeth, I moved my indicator up here so that I could make a skim cut on the gear and see how the witness marks were, and then I could move it in a controlled amount, 5 thousandths, 10 thousandths, and then make another skim cut until I was happy that I was running parallel to what the factory was. before that I was just guessing, and I was going too far one way, then too far back, and then too far the other way, and then I was just basically wasting time. So that's an easy way to, you really are going to have an indicator on this in the process here to get this thing very close at all. But that was definitely helpful to set an indicator up there for adjusting my angle on my grinder. And then when you switch from cutting, when the leading edge is on that side versus the leading edge being on that side, you just drill more holes. You can either move your mount, drill a new hole, move your gear, drill a new hole, combination of the two. I think I had my stop. You gotta have some different length bolts for your stop. I guess you could use a piece of all thread and you could make it infinitely adjustable. I wasn't looking to get that involved, but I said I had to add that because when I was like up in the slot, as I was working this up and down, it was also working down, which was rendering my my stop useless. So that was the last of it. Like I said, the only other big thing I would change is putting either mechanical stop on it or some kind of a deal that possibly 2 stops to where you like back this off a quarter turn, tighten that a quarter turn, vice versa, so that it loads the gear all the way over, takes all the slop out consistently, and then that you have a mechanical stop to put the gear against. So anyways, hope all that helps.